Writing, no. Being an artist, steeped in a creative ocean, drowning me as I struggle to surface. Making things is fun. Oftentimes, it's difficult to remember that. Oftentimes, it's difficult to understand why we do what we do. That's why having diverse stories are important, since we can reflect and witness versions of ourselves through the comfort of fiction. It's here where the power of stories lie. Stories can often be told one way to injure, but at the same time, it can also be medicine. A story told one way could cure. A cure implies a disease to be overcome, an affliction which has done harm. In my case, this affliction takes form of sadness, apathy, dread. Any other slice of life is usually a good cure, but sometimes I need a better prescription. I found comic girls to have genuine characters and exploration of a creative's journey. Sure, a cursory glance will net you this is probably a cute girls doing cute things show, which I'm in no position to doubt. However, it's different from the vast majority of shows that are under this genre. A-Channel, Yuru Yuri, Minami K, Yu Yu Shiki, Urara Merocho, Mitsubashi Colors, Kofuki Graffiti, and although I can keep listing these shows, I actually don't think they're bad. They have a specific purpose, and they cure a specific situation, but many of them are very similar. Comic Girls starts simply. We follow Karoku Moita, or Kaos, a 4-koma mangaka, who moves into a dorm, hoping it would help her draw. She meets Koyomi, a shoujo mangaka, Ruki, an adult mangaka, and Tsubasa, a shonen mangaka, with Ruki and Tsubasa already published. There's no main plot, no overarching situation, except for the growth and development of each character as they work on being better artists and people. The episodes work well individually, unrestrained by needing to advance a greater plot, and solely focusing on its main components. With this quality in mind, the show was able to turn many of its episodes into allegories, condensed versions of what artists go through. Putting aside how many times I could go, yeah, this is definitely a feeling I've had, I know many of my friends and people out there share in these experiences. This makes the show unique, as not only does it provide an extra layer for those sharing the same experiences, but it's also informative for those who don't. The show still has gags and lighthearted fluff, but because it cares and wants to explore these topics properly, there are an incredible amount of serious and emotional moments. And of course, I'll explore and give examples, but for now, enjoy this transition. The main proponent of this show having so much development and movement is the characters, all of which at first seem ordinary and tropey. The main character is cutesy and bumbly. She's the butt of every joke. The serious, stoic one who's also a Chad, but actually pretty awkward. The straight man of all the jokes, much more serious. The reliable half of the serious one, and the popular one, very cheery and sociable, everyone's friend, and also has an endless stomach. However, the characters differentiate themselves by their involvement with the creative field. Watching them, it was hard not to be reminded of my experiences as a writer. Even more so, the comedy used made it palpable. This created a powerful contrast to supplement the character's complexity. Kaos is the easiest to see this contrast in action. Her design exudes the feeling of someone who is helpless and needs protection. However, underneath her cutesy and bubbly personality is darkness. Kaos is steeped in self-loathing, but in spite of her current ability, she works hard every day. Her arc is analogous to the beginning of a creative journey. She's full of hope and aspiration, but having just hopes and aspiration is lofty. She fails and spirals into sadness at every given moment, having mountains of failed work before even getting a single one out there. And even then, she still struggles, still fighting to maintain hope. When I started writing, it was very much like that, and to think back on it fondly would be difficult. There was so much failure and self-loathing while writing subpar pieces. But all of it culminated to where I am now, in a position that I'm happy and satisfied to keep moving forward. Seeing a parallel journey through Kaos, seeing her elation as her work is acknowledged, seeing the payoff of the entire show where her zero net gain finally became positive was a well-earned development. Most of all, seeing it through a comedic and lighter veil didn't make me dwell in misery. It made me root for her, and by extension, it helped me remember to keep rooting for myself. It was exactly the medicine I needed. And it doesn't even matter if it's not applicable to everyone. Seeing this development be paid off is rewarding. The storyboard that gets accepted after 11 episodes of constant rejections is a storyboard that culminates her experience throughout those episodes, making each moment matter and culminates so much more than you would think, and putting into perspective every event leading to her debut. With Kaos being analogous to the beginning, it follows that each other character parallels a different progressive stage within that journey. For brevity's sake, I won't go over each of the 4 characters in too much detail. However, these stages are non-linear. Failure can happen anytime in the package of Kaos. Inexperience constantly comes marching like Koyomi, and even when you've debuted, you're still growing and learning like Tsubasa and Ruki. Ruki, despite being in a position where she has made it, hasn't accepted what she draws. Artists going through dissonance aren't all too uncommon. Imposter syndrome is quite a universal language, and it's hard to overcome. There's a constant lingering feeling that what you're making isn't right. Ruki never wanted to draw adult manga. She wanted to draw, ironically, kids manga, but her art style suited adult works, and so she's been riding that high ever since, taking on an appropriate moniker to suit. But she's embarrassed at what she draws. She's embarrassed to be an artist. This is her dream, and she can't even be proud. It's a sad reality how Ruki felt cornered, and how she felt her world would implode if people discovered her true identity. Seeing her grow from that, seeing her confront her fans and have her hard work be reciprocated, that everything she drew wasn't for nothing, that all of her doubts were just doubts, was one of the most emotional moments of the show, and it happened on episode 4. Ruki went through a life-altering development where she now accepts who she is, overcoming the doubts in her heart, and it was real and actualized, making her development well-earned. And again, her emotions were so real for me. Even in small instances of having my work read by classmates and having my work be seen and acknowledged by teachers, it goes a long way, no matter where someone is in their journey. It really helped remind me why I write in the first place, and reminded me to embrace myself and to be okay with what I make. Imposter syndrome will always linger, and even after Ruki confronts her fans and sees the overwhelming support, she is still a little bit embarrassed at what she draws. Except now it's no longer toxic and mentally draining. Now she has more focus and a direction in who she is. The season Comic Girls aired was spring 2018, completely out of my radar. This was the same year which had two highly anticipated sequels for me, Steins Gate Zero, which was okay, and Amanchu Season 2, which was also unfortunately just okay, but it also gave us Hinamatsuri and Hisone to Masotan, along with fan favorites I didn't watch, and a movie that would later become one of my favorites. In short, this season was crazy. If I had watched Comic Girls then, I'm not sure where my expectations would have brought me. I'm not sure what I would have expected from that version of me who hadn't watched the amount of slice of life variants I have now. Maybe I wouldn't have responded to it the same way I do now. After all, my expectations were different. And going into anything during that season, I was very critical, way more than I am now. Going into any show with expectations is dangerous. I started writing with expectations of working hard enough in my early years and shoot to the moon, as if that was the only place I could be, despite not realizing how much work and other factors had to be taken into account. Reality is harsh. Having expectations about reality is harsher. And this also applies to fiction. Having expectations for any show is dangerous, whether it's a show that's serious, comedic, or may seem like it's from an oversaturated genre. I say oversaturated, but I think this genre is still pumping out diverse shows, even with glaring similarities. We have so many different themes and topics, and being seen is never a bad thing. And so, yeah, I enjoyed Comic Girls because I didn't have expectations of what it was. I didn't really have much other than the premise. I found it through a recommendation, and without realizing it, it was a cure I didn't know would affect me so greatly. Beyond my biases, I still heavily recommend this show to anyone interested in the genre, even if they aren't invested in the creative journey analogy, but just as a well-written show with genuine depth, characterization, and development. It may not be Barakamon, Aizaken, or Shirobako, some of my favorite shows about artists, but even those shows I went in without expectation. And so, the expectation of Comic Girls should be like going into most shows, without expectations. I'll even say that the show is extremely flawed in many other ways, that some of the episodes were paced really awkwardly, that some episodes had random tone shifts and plot movement that didn't make sense. Episode 9 had one of my favorite messages and creative parallels, discussing how an artist's lifestyle can drastically affect their ability to create, and how important it is to maintain and take care of yourself. However, this moment is ruined when another seemingly random conflict ends the episode with a joke that came out of nowhere and really defeated the purpose of the amazingly developed first half. And there was also room to explore more with the characters. However, the amount of substance and depth the show already has makes it worth it, even with all of these flaws. And even with expectations, I think this show can stand its ground. Just don't go expecting this show to not still be a slice of life with elements of cute girls doing cute things, because that's all there, along with all of the other good stuff. I really enjoy making things, but sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes it's easy to forget why we do the things we do. But seeing it laid out so fervently, seeing these characters go through situations so close to reality, seeing them grow, it became that much easier to remember. Sometimes, all it takes is a parallel world with comic girls.